Bum bum bum, literature gets a look. Legs talk about books. And welcome back to Legs Talk About Books, the occasional podcast where we talk about books. I'm Hardleg Joe, if you didn't know, joined by my perennial co-host, the CB Radio.
Yeah, we're back. Don't read into it.
We're back. We've come, it's been a while. It's been a lot longer than we were planning to.
Yeah.
And we did plan to take a little bit of a break, but we also planned to come back in January, maybe February, because we bought this Brandon Sanderson Kickstarter campaign where he was releasing 4 books, and the first one was supposed to come out in January, and due to shipping issues and apparently trouble with the foiling on the cover, I didn't get mine until like late April. So, but we did say we would do all 4 books, and we finally finished the first one, which is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson.
Doesn't that sound so very magical?
Illustrations by Howard Lyon, which I didn't necessarily want pictures, but, you know, I guess they're not a bad thing. You know, they didn't really hurt anything.
They're not unhelpful.
Yeah, they're not unhelpful, but I didn't need them. You know, I could have played on hard mode.
Play it through the theater of the mind, the real way to read a book.
I read books on ultra-violence. I don't care if the monsters respawn.
The words are just coming in the page so much faster.
But yeah, we finally got it done. We're finally here, and we're just going to do pretty much the same thing we've always done, which if you're unfamiliar with our format, generally we start with a spoiler-free review, and then afterwards we jump into some discussion. We're just going to assume that either you're not going to read the book or you already have read the book. We're just going to talk about some interesting things that we thought about it. Just a nice little discussion. It's kind of like a book club.
Mm-hmm.
With just the 2 of us, though. I guess you can listen. You're like the people in the apartment above us who just like hear voices and put their ears against the floor so they can feel like they're part of a party. But yes, Tress of the Emerald Sea. Like I said, spoiler-free thoughts. And since I've been talking for a few minutes, Brandon, why don't you begin? What did you think of this novel?
I enjoyed it. It doesn't bring a lot new to the table, other than its setting, which definitely kudos to him on that.
The setting is cool.
The setting is cool and different, but I will say that the beginning is a little rough.
Yeah. I'm not even sure if it's a pacing issue, but at the very beginning, this certainly seems like it's going to be a very slow, plodding, boring romance novel. With a name like Tress in the Emerald Sea, it seems almost like this wistful, kind of beautiful thing. There's a picture of a woman standing longingly on a rock, peering out into the ocean with her hand extended, and you think this might be some sort of, like, long diatribe about loneliness, and it is not. Without giving anything away, there's a lot of action in this book, there's a lot of adventure, there's a lot of comedy. It is very much going to be a goofy book.
Yeah, and the comedy does weave very naturally in with the action. I will say it's very, very well written, very well put together.
Yeah, as anything you can expect from Brandon Sanderson. He doesn't do, like, a bad job. I was just worried, if you've heard about the origins of this story, he supposedly wrote it for his wife during the COVID lockdown, just as something for the 2 of them to enjoy. And so I assumed that it might be something a little more personal, again, maybe a romantic story or whatever. And I remember it took me like a week to get through the first like 4 chapters, because I would read one and be like, oh, I can see where this is going, and I don't really want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I got past it, I was like, oh, okay. And then it was full steam ahead, and we finished the whole thing in like another week.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. That like that's the hard part I had at the beginning, is that I could feel the author's hand in it at the very beginning. It felt very much like, Sanderson, calm down. I feel like you're talking at me, and it's not fun.
Yeah.
And then once it starts picking up, you kind of just, the brakes come off and you just want to go forward. And that's...
I will also say there is a little bit of like humor and cheekiness sort of sprinkled in at the start, but it really does feel like he's trying to find this humorous voice in the story, and it isn't until, again, like chapter 5, 6, that he really starts picking up. I had my first chuckle around then, and as it went on, he just got more and more better at the comedy. He seemed to like get more comfortable with being this goofy, quirky character, and you got to accept it more.
And not to give anything away, but the postscript does pretty much flat out say that this was Sanderson working to try out a new voice. And you kind of get that feel after you've read the first few chapters.
And, you know, even saying that, I wouldn't even say it's like a strong criticism, because this isn't like the first Wheel of Time book, where it really takes like, you know, half a book to get going, and even then it's kind of slow.
Wouldn't know.
This really, after the fourth chapter or whatever, really gets started. So you barely have to get anything into it at all. Like, as long as you're willing to put up with, again, just like 4 short chapters. The chapters in this are pretty short.
Really short.
Which I guess should have been the first hint that this was more of an action-y adventure kind of book. It is very much just trying to get you through this little set piece and this thing, and this happens and then that happens. It just takes a little bit to get going. So on that regard, I would say it definitely succeeds. If you want a book that's entertaining, very entertaining. If you want some new original ideas, he's got some unique sci-fi stuff in there.
He's got it in spades, really.
Yeah. If you want like a message, if you want some morals, it's definitely got a little bit of that. That's actually one of the main things we'll talk about in the spoilers, because he does it in kind of an interesting way. But there's definitely, you know, it's more than just an action story. There is some heart there. There is something he's trying to communicate. A couple little different things that he's trying to communicate that kind of elevate this above average. I don't normally give like scores, but this is a good case of like 8 out of 10. I don't think this is going to be anyone's favorite book. But below that, it's like that rating of damn fine book.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, much like the title character in this book, it is much more than it seems at first.
Yeah. It's definitely worth reading. It's nice if you like reading. And especially like, this is very accessible. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of a science fiction quirk. You gotta be kind of into fantasy. But a lot of it is grounded enough in our reality and in the characters just being like cool humans to hang out with that I think you could enjoy this. Like I'm considering just giving this to my mom, who likes to read mostly mystery novels and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, I think she would enjoy this.
And also, just kudos to Brandon Sanderson. This is a strong opener to a self-publish.
Yeah. If this is the first, if this is like the least good of the books, then I'm excited to see what the other ones are. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's about all we have to say in terms of reviewing the book. It's good. 8 out of 10. Check it out. It's not amazing. It's not going to blow your mind, but solidly enjoyable all the way through. If you can get it at a reasonable price, check it out. And with that, I think we're going to go right into spoiler territory. Mm-hmm. And again, we'll just repeat. We're not going to really do a whole synopsis or anything. We're going to assume that you either have already read the story or you're not going to read it. And we're just going to give you the bare amount of context needed to understand. So I hope you're ready to swim, because we're jumping into the deep end, brother. Woo!
I don't have a really good comeback on that.
Gotta be enthusiasm.
All I can think about is if this were the Spore Sea, we'd be very dead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like
completely.
Oh man, again, just to start off, the actual like setting of the Emerald Sea and the different color seas, such a striking and interesting idea. That it kind of, you could almost sell the story on it. Which
it pretty much does. This is definitely a story that's about the setting almost. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I think kind of strikes it is that while this is a very interesting setting, he doesn't really, like, say anything about it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, oftentimes when you hear, like, a story about a setting, it's like, oh, it's a tale of 2 cities, and, like, the cities represent something. And here it's like, oh, it's a tale about, like, these giant seas of different colored spores that all react to water. And they don't really mean anything or represent anything. There's nothing to say about, like, you know, the fierceness of nature or people's ability to explore, or like in the same way that like Stormlight Chronicle, you could almost see that as like the fact that people have survived when there are such powerful storms and adapted to it is almost like a statement on how humanity will persevere and survive in like any environment. It's very slim. You kind of do a little bit of reading there, but there is some substance there. Whereas this is really just like, wouldn't it be cool if the oceans were made of non-liquid?
Admittedly, I've always seen the Emerald Sea as a allegory for capitalism.
Yeah. It's a sea of green dollars, you see. And then,
it gets into you, it starts growing out, and the vines go everywhere.
It gets its vines within you. But then what does the Red Sea mean?
Communism.
Communism. The Red Sea of communism, right next to the Black Sea of death, because we all know where that leads. Political satire.
I was going to say racism, but okay.
No, we're not going into racism. You're not allowed. Get out of here.
The racist sea? Oh,
no,
come on.
We're not even... Tress of the racist sea. But yeah, it's a very, very compelling setting, but that's kind of like all it is. Like, if you like hearing about cool sci-fi worlds, it's there. But if you don't, then this is not really going to do a whole lot for you.
Yeah.
And really, I could almost say this about the entire book. If you're familiar with our previous episodes, we've mentioned before, normally we sit down and we write out, like, detailed thoughts, stuff we want to say about this story. But there's not a whole lot to say about this, because it's just, like, generically good, right? Like, it's not so bad that there's a whole bunch of flaws or, like, hidden gems that we need to, like, elevate above the flaws, nor is it so amazing that we have to be like, oh, it did this thing better than we've ever seen before. It made me feel this new emotion or look at a problem the way I've never seen it before. It doesn't communicate anything so radical that we really, like, must sing its praises. It's just kind of, like, good.
Mm-hmm. Though I would actually disagree with you on one point. The reason why we're going to have difficulties describing some of the finer points of this book is because there really aren't finer points. They kind of, the points that are meant to be like emotional or lessons learned or anything, the book tells you.
Yeah.
The book straight up just tells you.
It's kind of blunt in that way, which is the kind of the one topic we did have sort of in mind. So this story is told from the perspective of a character called Hoyt, who, if you know the Cosmere, the Brandon Sanderson expanded universe, Hoyt is like this demigod creature of, like, trickery and mischief who kind of goes around to the different worlds. I believe he's a big character in the Stormlight Archive, right?
I wouldn't say trickery. I thought he was more of, like, he's the Gandalf of that, like, that entire thing.
Oh, is he the Gandalf? I always got the impression he was more like the Loki.
I got the impression he was the Gandalf because he was just kind of, like, going around and he kind of starts adventures because why the hell not? Because
I never got that impression from Gandalf. Usually Gandalf's the wise old man trying to fix the world's problems.
Yes, but he also puts people on adventures just to put them on adventures. Yeah.
He's the Hobbit Gandalf, not Lord of the Rings Gandalf.
Yeah, he's that Bilbo, you need to go slay a dragon. Like, yeah. I'm a guy who sits here drinking tea, but a dragon. Come on, Bilbo.
Forget about second breakfast. I could never.
And then Bilbo's like, I'm so glad I slayed that dragon. I know, right?
You got so much treasure that you could buy more tea with. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the point is, this is told from a character who is part of the expanded universe, who has shown up in at least one other story. I think he might be another. We're not big enough Sanderson fanboys to really know. Mm-hmm. I think all I've read is the first Mistborn story and the first Stormlight Archive.
Same here.
And then the last 3 Wheel of Time books, which are not part of the Cosmere. They just happen to be Brandon Sanderson.
Much to Sanderson's chagrin. No. Yeah. But I will say, this is the reason why, like, it takes a while for us to realize that the story's, like, narrative is better. Because at first it feels like it's Sanderson talking to you until it says, like, oh, it's Hoyt.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, so for me it was like, oh, so this isn't the author. This is the author's character surrogate.
Yeah, he's specifically being cheeky because he's trying to play the role of Hoyt, this sort of trickster demigod character who is telling the story and also within the story.
Mm-hmm. Also known as the character as Wit. If to imply more of, like, why he's so snarky.
Yeah, Wit was his name in Stormlight Archive, or at least how he introduced himself in the first story. Mm-hmm. I guess in the later stories he reveals his actual name to be Hoyt.
Let's be honest, Wit's a better name.
You never liked the name Hoyt.
I don't like the name Hoyt. It just doesn't sound like, yes, I've traveled from place to place, for my name is Hoyt.
It sounds almost like a shortened version of hemorrhoid.
Yeah.
I got those Hoyts on my anus.
We're not going to get to the end of this review, are we?
We already got to the end of the review. Now we're just doing the weird talky thing where we just kind of shoot the shit and talk about art stuff.
And don't talk about shooting the shit after you're talking about hemorrhoids.
But yeah, so the point is, the story's told by Hoyt, and he's very much doing the storyteller thing, where, you know, there's certain art places where he definitely breaks the fourth wall and is just talking to you as the audience. And because of that, there's a lot of times where he'll just straight up be like, and then this character overcame the big flaw that they were fighting against, and their character arc reached its resolution. Like, he uses a little bit more flowery language to do it, but it's very close to just, like, removing the artistry from it and just straight up telling you, like, here is the dramatic point of the story. Here is the tidbit that I wanted to communicate about this. Some chapters just straight up tell you, like, let me tell you a lesson about why it's important to be pragmatic.
But also the scene where he specifically gets down to talking about how Tress has done something that no other character has ever done, or like very few.
Very rarely do.
He does that in a very, very blunt way, in a basically like, use common damn sense, you damn fools.
It's this very much, again, breaking the fourth wall, very meta joke, where Tress like, oh, I think this character has this motivation, and then she stops and she's like, actually, I shouldn't assume that. And he takes a whole, like, 4 or 5 pages to be like, you don't understand. We cut out, like, 5 chapters of this story because Tress didn't assume things. She actually went out and was like, let's reinforce this. Let's make sure that I'm right before taking a rash action.
Yeah.
And it's that good combination of, yes, I like that you've done this, but it still feels kind of cheap, almost.
It does feel kind of cheap, but it also does kind of play well with the character of Hoyt / Wit, where he's just kind of like, I'm tired of seeing these people make the dumb decisions over and over again.
I've lived a million lives, and I've told a million stories, and so many of them follow the same trends, so it's really nice to see this one just do something a little bit different.
Yeah, so yeah, it does work in that way, but also it is indelibly frustrating from the reader's perspective to just be like, yes, we get it, she's pragmatic. We're good.
We're good. Well, to me, it's the thing about it, the reason that it's worth talking about is I can't actually decide how I feel about this. Mm-hmm. People who are fans of all my other work know that I also have a channel I call the political channel that does like video essays and stuff. But I made an essay recently specifically about like, what is art? What is the purpose of art? And in making that, I kind of came away with this idea that art is communication. It's a way to express ideas or tell people other ideas. And the benefit of using art, right, is that like, yeah, I can tell you why stealing is bad. Or I could tell you a story that you get invested into with characters, and the characters have your perspective of like, oh, I can just steal and it'll be fine. And then you show them through the story how that ends up hurting a lot of people and even hurting themselves. And you can get that idea across much more effectively through art than you could through just, you know, telling someone this is bad. Mm-hmm. Basically, if you can use an unintuitive way to tell someone a message, instead of telling them outright, you create a painting or a drawing or write a story, you could tell that, not even a lesson necessarily. Because communication could be anything. You know, an action movie communicates, wouldn't this car chase be really cool?
It would.
Yeah,
They went up the pyramids of Giza, bro.
Dragon Ball Z communicates, isn't fighting awesome? Check it out, what if we could fly around and shoot beams? Like, it's not really telling you a message, it's just like someone thought of something they thought was really cool and they wanted to show you it. And it's easier to you know, draw a picture that explains it than it is to just, like, tell you, you know? No one wants to listen about your OC shooting beams or whatever, but if you make it into an anime, well, now I can pay attention, now I can see all the cool stuff you were wanting to talk about.
Yeah.
But in this case, a lot of Wit's little side tangents really are just, like, trying to teach you a lesson about something. They are trying to communicate something in a very direct way. And it's very interesting to see how much he goes out of his way to, like, remove the artistry from it. You know, he is in the middle of a story, and then he'll just tell you a little side tangent about the lesson you can take from it. And on the one hand, yeah, I guess that feeling of cheapness is the word I would describe. There's something about it that kind of feels almost antithetical to art. I like the activity of taking art and trying to deconstruct its meaning. Like, that's really fun to me. I like when art has deeper stuff that if you go looking or you can interpret, you can find those meanings. Sometimes stuff that's really blunt is boring. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't trigger your mind all that much. But at the same time, you can have that problem of someone tries to tell you something, but they do it in such a clever, artsy way that the message gets lost.
Spring sound?
No, I knew what they were trying to say. I just thought their message was garbage.
Well, yes, but it's also the amount of flowers in there made a garden puke, I'd say.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we can think of, there's other examples of stuff that has done that, where, like, you know, they get so into the weeds of, like, trying to be really elegant about it that most people just don't understand what they were trying to say. Mm-hmm. You will not have this here. You will not mistake. As communication, it's very effective, but it's almost like not artistic enough. But if point of art is communication, then, like, well, they succeeded, so I don't know, it fills me with conflicting feelings.
I will say that there are a couple of lessons that I am going to come away from this book with. Namely, there's a part in there talking about how when you do a job that's of physical labor, it doesn't mean that your brain is turned off. It just means that you're thinking on a different level, or most of the time that you're thinking about other things than your physical labor.
He talks about selling your body for physical labor versus selling your mind for mental labor, and how there's often this stigma almost with, like, physical laborers, like, oh, you do physical labor because you're dumb. And it's like, no, you do physical labor so that you can use your mind to make, like, art or whatever. Mm-hmm. If you make a job out of making art, then all your mental energy is going to be left over, and all you can do for fun is just, like, lift weights or whatever.
And that admittedly is a bit of Sanderson kind of putting that out there, but in a good way. I enjoyed it, and I learned from that.
Yeah. And I've tried to express this before when I didn't really have a super concrete idea of what, like, I thought art was. Mm-hmm. In previous episodes, I'll talk about, like, what makes a story a 9 or a 10 out of 10. And it teaches me something new about the world. It makes me look at things in a different way. And the way I would express that now is, like, it communicated something that I needed to hear. Something that was helpful to me in my life. Mm-hmm. Something that, like, oh, my life is now going to be better because I learned this thing, and I learned it from seeing this piece of art. House of Leaves did that to me. Papers, Please did that to me. A lot of my favorite stories are the ones that had an actual impact on me. And I could definitely see some people getting, like, little messages and stuff out of this. Mm-hmm. But because they're these little diatribes, like, you'll remember that message, but I'm not sure if it's going to be, like, as impactful as if that was, like, the climax of the story was learning that.
Well, the funny thing is that, yeah, there's stuff like that, but then there's ones like Anne. Yeah. Where there's a character called Anne in this book who has a bad reputation on aiming.
Yeah, she's an awful marksman. She absolutely loves firing guns and cannons and weapons, but she's so dangerously bad at it that no one wants to let her.
It's humorous, and you do play it up for laughs several times. And there's a moment where both Anne and the audience find out why she's having this problem, is that she has a myopathy, I think it was. Her eyes, like, she was given glasses that corrected the issue, but then when she's given the chance,
she still doesn't succeed at first. She still has bad aim, even though her vision gets corrected.
Because the character herself has been told by so many people, and even the audience have been chuckling along with this joke that Anne can't hit a damn thing. Yeah. And then you realize Anne believes she can't hit a thing, even if she was given the best eyes in the world. With the steadiest hand, she believes she wouldn't be able to hit it.
Yeah, and she's lived that for so long. He uses this metaphor of, like, she's staring at this mountain that is her inability to hit things, and it's like, I'll never be able to climb over that because I'm so absolutely awful. I'm comically bad at it, and even these glasses are only going to help me get, like, 5 feet up.
Mm-hmm.
And then all it takes is one person to step up and like help her out and like convince her like, no, you can do this. Take another shot. Go a little higher. You were close. And then she does it. She gets a little closer. And then the third shot actually hits. And then she's hitting every shot. And they have this really dramatic moment of like, and then she looked down from the top of the mountain, and it seemed absurd that this little molehill ever kept her from firing in the first place.
That made me cry. And it made me tear up right now, just thinking about it. And that's a compelling way that this story...
Yeah. That's one of the better side tangents. Again, because it has the artistry of it. It frames it as this little story about a person climbing a mountain.
Mm-hmm. This not just this mountain, but this mountain that you've gone through this side character with through most of the book in a very good emotional way, and I like that.
And again, I remember reading about that and just being like, this is going to resonate with Brandon. And I don't know how personal you want to get on this, but I know we've talked. Brandon has a thing for a while where he always uses like self-deprecating humor, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a good sign that you're not, prideful. It's good to be humble about yourself. But for a while, you did it so much that it almost felt like you believed it.
Yeah, there's still a lot of points that I do believe, but hearing that story, I will say without a doubt, has put me another 5 foot of my personal mountains.
Yeah.
And I may look down someday and be like, look at that. I've been so far. Again,
just realizing, when you self-deprecate yourself, again, it starts out good, but I remember seeing, there's a word for it, and I can't remember it, almost like this toxic humility, where people get so much into I shouldn't take myself seriously, that they begin to not take anything they do seriously.
Mm-hmm.
That they start to feel like they don't do anything. I'm not sure if yours actually got that bad or anything. But it's definitely this idea of other people's perspective. If other people start joining in and being like, yeah, you are comically bad. And then it's then it just feels like I've just always been bad at things.
Yeah.
And it's no, you're not. It's one of those mountains that seems insurmountable, but it's not. You and the people around you have built it up without meaning to. And you can easily get over it. I believe in you, buddy.
Thank you. Moving on.
Yeah. Enough therapy for Brandon. That's not what we're here for.
Yeah. The romance. I want to talk about the romance in this book.
Oh, yeah.
It is one of the best I've seen. It is something that felt genuine and real. And he did it within 5 chapters. It
is very weird how you can really put almost Tress, and I don't even remember his name.
Charlie,
because they spend most of the book apart, at least you think they do.
Mm-hmm.
They only really connect in the first couple pages, and it seems almost so saccharine sweet at first, where it's just oh, she likes him, and he likes her, and oh, they're just so coy or whatever. But there's this moment near the beginning that is absolutely going to stick with me as being the cheesiest thing ever, but hitting home just how perfectly these people match up without having to do anything about soulmates or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a moment where you get an internal monologue from Tress where she's Charlie's an old pair of gloves. He just fits so perfectly. It feels as though they were made for your hands. And she's maybe that sounds weird to be I love you like a glove, but that's just how I think. I'm just kind of weird like that. And then a chapter later, Charlie's leaving on a boat, and he's I gotta tell you something important, Tress. You're I think you're really cool. You're like a glove, like a fencing glove, that probably sounds stupid. And she's no, I get it so much, Charlie, you couldn't possibly understand.
And no, apparently they possibly do both perfectly understand each other.
Yeah.
And it's one of those like you said, saccharine sweet, but it was a very solid point to build the story off of.
It was such a small note, but as soon as they did that, I was these two are meant to be together.
And we go on the journey with her. Basically, you find out that he's been captured by the sorceress, and the sorceress is just this dragon-like entity. Ironically, there's a dragon.
But she's this huge magical entity that the king has been trying to send fleets of ships to stop her, and they've been unable to. And Tress is like, well, I may just be a little window washer, but I'm going to go out and find a way to save him from the sorceress. And then, through some shenanigans, she becomes the captain of a pirate ship.
But yeah, like, because of those two gloves that fit perfectly together, you go with her on this journey. You are fully invested. You're not like, oh, this window washer could never. You're like, this window washer has to do it. Yeah. She has to kill the sorceress.
She has to. The determination is there.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking Undertale levels of determination.
Yeah.
The mouse will get the cheese, Brandon.
I see the little star. It fills me with determination. And so, like, that through line definitely is a great rod throughout the entire story. It somehow takes the smallest amount of time to build up a relationship and makes us believe it. That is 100% kudos to you, Sanderson.
Yeah.
If you ever decide to watch these.
That's one of those things. I'm not sure I would necessarily say, like, this taught me anything about love. I don't think it reflects real love. But as far as craftsmanship, Sanderson in 2 chapters made me believe that these people were utter soulmates. And when you see the insane stuff that Tress does, the insane risks she takes to go save Charlie, like, you believe it just because of that one little, like, metaphor, because he made it so well. And it's like, damn, like, scriptwriters wish they could make characters that compelling that quickly.
And on top of being compelling, like, he also solidifies her character as a person, her pragmatism, on top of her concern for others.
I mean that's the whole thing that I didn't make a video about, that I'm thinking about, like, making a part 2 to the art video, sort of talking about, like, what's the point of entertainment, or what's the difference between art and entertainment. And to me, it's like, entertainment is a tool that you use to make your art more effective. Mm-hmm. You understand and you remember the messages better when they happen to characters that are believable and trustworthy, and characters that you identify with. And Sanderson is just so excellent at that, because I'm looking through the pages now, and I'm looking back, and it's really so much of this story could be seen as, like, very convenient. The fact that Hoyt happened to be on the ship, that the ship ran into her, that she chose not to leave when she had the ability, that Crow decided to use her for this, that Crow was going for that. All these things, like, if you were paying attention more to the plot, would be like, wow, this is really convenient. Right up to the very end, which is almost like a Deus Ex Machina. Mm-hmm. But because Sanderson is so good at crafting these characters and making you empathize with their struggles, with what they're thinking and what they're doing, you're not really even thinking about that. You're just like, when something unexpected happens that is very unlikely but benefits them, all you think about is, yeah, there we go. Now Tress and Charlie will be able to do this.
So, like, admittedly, he does take a good chunk to explain why the crew decide to do this.
Yeah.
But, like, the fact that Tress and Charlie are, like, tied up at the very end by the sorceress, there is no hope, and then boom, the ship appears out of nowhere. And you're like, holy shit, yes!
The whole crew came for them.
Yes! You're not thinking, why the hell did they do this? You're like,
how did they do this?
Even though he does explain it, you're just like,
he sets up enough foreshadowing, but it is, like, awfully convenient that everything works out. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because at the end of the day, like, you do kind of essentially find out that this story was more like Hoyt's story. Mm-hmm. That Hoyt had a bet with the sorceress. I guess for the people who didn't read, you may be wondering, like, this godlike being or whatever who is on the ship, why isn't he like doing anything?
Casting magic.
Yeah, and he's been cursed by the sorceress
to be a damn idiot.
Yeah, she removed all his senses, or all the important senses rather.
His sense of taste, sense of self, sense of humor, and
sense of style.
Sense of, what's the 5th one? Because he said the 5 senses.
I forget. That was one of the good puns where they're like, he removed all my sense of taste. And then they reveal that, like, oh, he's eating something. He's like, no, not that kind of taste. Like, I was wearing socks with sandals.
Yeah.
It was that kind of taste that she removed, which is much more important for someone as powerful as me.
And the best indicator at the beginning is like, and a sense of humor. It kind of goes with the name. And you're like, oh, wit. Oh, so this is wit.
So and there you are again.
There you are, good sir. Welcome.
Yeah, so he had bet the sorceress. You basically find out that he approached the sorceress, and even though he has powers that are probably better than hers, he wanted her specific kind of magic. I think they said, like, she's part of a specific club, and you have to be invited into the club to know how to do that.
It's some magic BS that they really don't go into.
Yeah, they don't explain it exactly. I think he's setting up for a future novel.
But the technology is pretty hilarious at the beginning. When he initially describes it at the end is hilarious because he's like, she was sitting typing on her laptop. Oh, I'm sorry. Her viewing screen.
Yes.
It's just like, he's just like, oh crap. What would they call it?
He's trying to explain it in like mystical terms.
It's like it's like trying to explain a cell phone to a primitive and just being like, this is my sending rock.
Yeah. But essentially you find out that Hoyt was more powerful than the sorceress, but he wanted access to, I believe, runes were her type of magic or something. Or...
He just wanted to glow like her.
Yeah, she has access to some kind of like runic. No, I don't think it was just the glow. I think the glowing represented that he was connected to some kind of runic ley line network that gave him magic.
With how like flippant the character is, I was under the impression that he was wanting to glow.
Yeah,
he just wanted to glow.
I think the glow represents something, but. Yeah, he came to her and he was basically like, I want to learn this magic. And she's like, no, I'm not going to teach you. And he's like, well, I heard you give out curses. What if you cursed me and in return, if I can break the curse, then I can have the magic? And she was like, sure. So she took away all his senses and made him a complete idiot. He's the cabin boy on the ship and he basically walks around like, I want to put oranges on my head. Isn't this awesome? Let's play reverse poker with I give you all my money.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the point, you find out that he got cursed on purpose and that to break the curse, he had to find some way as a complete idiot to make his way back to the sorceress's island where even the all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't get there. And so yeah, there's this whole thing where they get back there and the crew charges the island and Hoyt gets in there and then as soon as he touches it, he just gets all his godlike powers plus her runic powers, dashes, teleports up to the top of the thing and is just floating there glowing like, I believe I've bested your challenge. And it's like, oh. It's literally like a Deus Ex Machina. It's the cabin boy had godlike powers the whole point and he can fight the sorceress. Yeah. That's what we need to do.
Always trust the cabin boys, what the story is trying to tell you.
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't completely out of nowhere. They set up for it. They established all this beforehand.
Oh, they power creeped him the entire show. The entire book, they're just like, oh, Hoyt is more powerful than he seems. Like, Hoyt, the guy who's eating shoestrings over here.
Yeah.
The guy who's literally walking around in underwear that haven't been washed in at least 3 months.
Yada, yada.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very interesting. But it's weird how he can make this anti-climax work as a climax. Mm-hmm. Just again making the character so compelling that like I don't care how Tress and Charlie win. I just want them to win.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that he does this with side characters too, where you like you get to a pirate ship and within a chapter he introduces every person on the ship that's of importance. Everybody else he calls Dougs, which is a great little shorthand he does. But everybody of importance, you get a very good sense of them. And then you hear their motivations and you get even more of a great sense. And you start to feel for them. Every
side character has a little, like, if not an arc, then they get at least a backstory that makes them understandable and relatable. Even the villains have good motivations and stuff.
But also, honestly, even the Dougs get some moments to shine.
A few Dougs get their own motivations.
And some really good stuff. So, like, his storytelling skills involving characters is really, truly not matched, I've seen.
Yeah, I guess that's... We went on a long tangent about it, but I guess the end of the day, it is a testament to, like... And the Dougs is a perfect example of that. Like, if a lesser author had been like, oh, they're on a ship and there's like 50 people on the ship, but only 4 matter. So these 4 have names and everyone else I'm just going to call Doug. Doesn't matter if they're man, woman, child, alien, or whatever. They're a Doug. Doug's a very popular name. He goes on this whole tangent about it. And like to a lesser author, that would have been completely just like absurd. It would have taken me out of it. But he makes it work. He has the ability, he's like a wordsmith. He has the ability to twist it around and say it in just the right way that you accept the Dougs and you come to like the Dougs. And when the Dougs cheer, you're like, yeah,
I'm with
good
the
on you,
Dougs.
Dougs. The Dougs are all cool. They're somehow formed their own like sort of character.
Yeah.
As like this collective group of just like faceless, nameless people.
And you can actually picture everybody, like, you could just see a bunch of human-shaped things with the word Doug over the face.
And then, you know, again, there's a time they get in a battle and one of the crew members died, and he just takes a moment, like, to remind you, like, yeah, I call them Dougs, but this particular Doug's name was Patrick, and he had, like, a sad story, and it's unfortunate that he died, because this other 2 Dougs will really miss him.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry, Dougs. It wasn't just, you know, they weren't just cannon fodder. The Dougs had lives. Although it's like the reverse. Or no, it is exactly like Fight Club. When you die, you get a name. His name was Robert Paulson. Up until then, he was a Doug.
Yeah. Though I will say that he also does, he does give every one of the Dougs a happy ending. Somehow.
Yeah, the Dougs have a good time.
Yeah. But I think that's about it.
Yeah, we talked longer than I was expecting. Granted, a lot of that's probably going to get cut out.
A lot of rambling.
But, you know, we're a little rusty. It's been a while since we've done this, and frankly, at this point, with how long it's been, I'm not sure how much of an audience there is for this. How many people are really going to come back? I am committed to at least finishing out these 4 Brandon Sanderson novels. Not sure necessarily about the future of the channel. There's so many other projects I want to work on. Maybe we can add... I don't know, I've been working on a tabletop game. Mm-hmm. Maybe I can bring that over here and like talk about that, because that's like writing, kind of.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe? I don't know. Comment in the comments if you made it this far. Are you interested in hearing about tabletop role-playing games? Is that close enough to literature, or is that not what you subscribed for?
Also, just for fun, if you have any ideas for us to try out, like...
Yeah, we always take suggestions or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you have anything... We're open to ideas. We're open to experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
Especially at this point where it's like, what do we have to lose? We can try whatever. I don't care. I'll do it as long as it doesn't take too much time away from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Show and the politics channel and the card game I'm working on and the relationship with my girlfriend and I got planning a vacation. If I can get it done in between then, we're good.
Well, he has a life. I don't. If you want more CB radio in this, come on.
Yeah,
give me something.
I can always, maybe I'll give the channel to you and you can use it to talk about the Twilight Zone. You've been wanting to do that, right?
Maybe not the Twilight Zone, but yeah, something on those.
Something like that.
The Outer Limits, I think I was looking into.
Either way, thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed. I appreciate you coming back after all this time. And until next time, keep reading.
Yeah.
You were supposed to say keep reading too.
Yeah, I said yeah.
Oh, fine.